Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your hosts, trial lawyers Kyle Herbert and Bill Ogden, and mediator Peter Taff, talk with interesting lawyers and break down recent legal news in detail. Here's Kyle, Bill, and Peter.
All right, welcome back to another edition of the Dirty Verdict Podcast. I am full-time mediator Peter Taff.
I am Kyle Herbert.
And I'm Bill Ogden.
Full-time nothing?
I'm a full-time Kyle.
I'm just here for the justice.
All right, well, very good. Well, Bill has provided a couple of recent guests. So, Bill, I'm going to let you introduce our guest today.
Yeah, today we have arguably the most terrifying woman I've ever met. And she's from
Extremely hard to believe that.
Beaumont, Texas, a great trial lawyer. Her name is Jane Leger. Jane, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And that is just one of the nicest compliments.
Did you say the most terrifying?
Yes. So I met Jane in the TPC explosion case, and it was kind of clear up front who are the people that were going to be invested in actually litigating and who were there to kind of supervise the people doing the work. And so I had all this, the ESI protocol, and I had a bunch of stuff already done from another case. And so I jumped into the mix, and Jane looked at me and she was like, "Hey, we've never worked together." She's like, "But if you got to yell at me or whatever," she's like, "I can take it." And I just looked at her and I was like, "You have a look like you can take it." And it terrified me. And so now, I made it a running joke on all the conference calls. They'd be like, "How's everybody feel?" And I was like, whatever Jane says, I'm in with that. I don't want to disagree with her. So
You say, Jane, if you need to yell at me, I'll cry. You don't like?
Yeah, 100%. I'm
Teared up a little bit.
I'm soft.
Would just be easy on me.
Yeah. So Jane, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where you're from, where you went to school.
Well, one of the reasons that TPC meant so much to me from the very beginning is that I grew up in Groves, which is a neighboring community to Port Neches, where TPC plant that exploded is located. So I graduated from Port Neches Groves. We called it P&G for short, the school that's right near the plant, in 1986. So a lot of the TPC clients are my family members, my former classmates, my friends, people that I've known my whole life. So when this big mass litigation started growing, I said, well, I've got to get in there and make sure it's done the way I think it should be done.
That's a similar story to me with the ITC fire right before, same year. It was in my hometown, and as you know, a lot of our clients have our cell phones, and they don't know what working hours are. And so, because I don't give my cell phone out to very many clients, but now I have 1,600, and about 1,000 of them already had it. So Sunday at 8:30 in the evening, hey, what's the update on? And I'm just like, can I make an appointment?
You get the messenger on Facebook or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, wait, now I've got to keep up with emails, text, messenger, and it's a lot, but you want to make sure your clients know what's going on.
100%.
It's just been crazy in this case.
Yeah.
Just really a wild run so far.
Where'd you go after P&G?
After P&G, well, I have an identical twin sister.
Oh, okay.
And my dad.
The circus. They put you guys in the circus?
Oh, yes, they did. My dad said, I'll pay for y'all to go to college anywhere you want as long as it's Baylor. And we said, okay, we're going to Baylor.
I didn't think it was Baylor. So probably
My aunt.
These guys talk bad about Baylor all the time.
So Jane, just
Glad you didn't know that. I might have been uninvited.
We'll defer Baylor commentary till the end once Jane likes us and kind of thinks we're okay.
There you go.
Don't lead off with your Baylor thoughts.
the Texas State stuff.
Yeah, Texas State, whatever. And
So there was one college application,
Wonderful.
Baylor.
And you and your sister went there.
Yes.
Did it confuse the heck out of the Baylor kids?
It confused the kids pretty badly.
Baptists think twins are from the devil, right?
Well, they thought we were.
If they didn't before, they did after.
I got suspended my first month, my freshman year, for getting caught in the boys' dorm.
Yes.
How did you bring your sister to the hearing and be like, it wasn't me? And she's like, it wasn't me either. Prove it.
No, she was standing at watch, and she didn't do her job that day. So they came in and I got caught. I've actually gotten arrested because of her before. But
Tell us
I think
that
it's
story. No, you got to tell us that story.
crazy. So when we were in high school, our parents had a lake house, a fishing camp in Lake Charles, Calcasieu Lake, Big Lake. And so we would drive back and forth. Of course, that was back in the day when the drinking age in Texas was 21, but we could go across the border at 18 and be legal. So we're coming back from the lake one day in bathing suits. I mean, nobody's really planning on going anywhere. We're just running back and forth. We had a ski boat. We loved to just go out there and jump in and ski and then head back for school or whatever. Well, my sister Jill is her name. She's the bad twin. I am clearly the good twin. That's why I'm here. She was speeding and the cop pulled her over in Lake Charles. And she looked at me and said, I don't have my driver's license. Give me your license.
Oh.
So I handed it to her thinking, well, this is no big deal. We're twins and, I know where to find her if there's a problem. So here.
Your poor parents.
Oh, yeah, it was bad. So she gives it to the cop, gets the ticket, and then I just forget about it. About 2 years later, we're driving back again over the border. I'm driving a Suburban. I'm sitting on a bottle of Crown Royal, trying to make sure it's hidden. And I've got all these girls in the back, and here come the blue and red lights. Right over the Texas border.
On the Texas side?
On the Texas side. So this cop comes up and I'm pleading my case. I'm so innocent. I'm just trying to get everybody home on this late Saturday night so they can be up for church in the morning. And I never had a ticket. I've never had a problem with the law at all. I've got a really clean record. Just please let me get these girls.
Sounds like somebody's about to go to jail.
Somebody was about to go to jail. So he was convinced. He was just down for it. And he says, well, it's protocol. I've got to go run your license, but let me do that and I'll be right back. So I didn't even wake anybody up in the back. They're all asleep, passed out, whatever. And I'm thinking, we are good to go. And he comes back and he's like, well, Miss Swearingen, I just don't understand how everything you told me about never being in trouble could be true when there's an active warrant out for your arrest. And I just went, what? And that was it. I was out, cuffed. I told my sister, you better get your ass up. And
Classic Jill.
And they were
Jill.
So you were like in high school when this happened, or college, early college?
6 years ago.
this was probably college, home for the summer.
So 88. No cell phones. So that was your phone call from the jail to her?
Well, even worse, my dad had just moved into a new house and they didn't have the phones hooked up yet. So I knew if I could just make it through the night, I could get somebody to his house in the morning and he could come get me. So I'm going through the whole thing. I'm being fingerprinted. I'm taking the little mug shot with the sign. I'm thinking, this is kind of all fun and games.
We got to get that mugshot.
It's out there. Nice. And then they say, okay, now it's time for the strip search.
Did they let you pick your song?
That's Bill's favorite part.
I just went, what? Yeah, you're going to be strip searched.
Which county? Was it Orange?
This is Jefferson.
Okay.
Oh, it was in Jefferson?
Well, it might have been, it was Vidor. It might have been Orange. Not terrible. It was so long ago.
On the line.
It was either Orange or Jefferson. And when they said strip search, I did the thing that I knew I could do if I had to, if the shit really hit the fan, but I did not want to do it. I said, call Walter Humphrey, and you're not touching me. And that was it. They called and woke Walter up in the middle of the night.
And that fixed the problem?
That about 30 minutes later, I had an attorney in a three-piece suit.
There's not a lot of problems in and around Jefferson County you couldn't fix back then with the name Walter Humphrey.
Right, exactly.
How did you know Mr. Humphrey? Family, friends, or?
He and my dad were law partners, and I had pretty much grown up around Walter, and I'd say like an uncle figure, always with my dad, always going duck hunting. And of course they worked together. So at the office, he was always there, and just, I knew it was a name that could get me out of trouble.
And is your father still alive?
He's not.
What was his name?
His name was Tom Swearingen.
And so he was partners with, it was Provost Humphrey, still is.
It is. At one point it was, well, Mr. Provost left. At one point it was Humphrey Swearingen, and I don't know who else. And then they got the Provost Humphrey name back, and this is where we have to go, like probably gonna have to edit some of this out. My biggest memory of the name, it was Provost Humphrey Swearingen and Edmonds, and you can just figure out what they called it for sure.
Right. So it became Provost Humphrey after that.
Yep. Hey, Pulse. Yep.
It sounds good, like a good club.
That's one way to do it. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so aside from that, you went on to graduate from Baylor
I did. And then
after your little break.
What was your degree?
Hey, what'd you study there at Baylor?
financial planning.
Okay.
And my sister was psychology. So we really did not have any classes together at all. No real overlap after the first year or so. And then we decided, we actually were home one summer, and my dad was trying a case in Judge Fisher's court. It was a Jones Act semen case. And we knew our dad was a lawyer, clearly, but we didn't really understand what he did. We'd never been to anything work-related. I just thought he went and sat in an office and, chase women all day.
That's what I do.
So we went to the federal courthouse there in Beaumont, and I remember that the plaintiff was so injured he could not sit up. And so they had him like a little pallet made on the front bench. And I was just mesmerized. I thought, oh my gosh, my dad is doing something really important and amazing, and he's helping this guy who can't even sit up. And I was hooked. After that, I was completely, much to my dad's dismay and probably displeasure at times. But my sister and I both were like, yeah, we want to do that.
So y'all both went to law school.
We did.
Where'd you go to law school?
Baylor. We had an aunt who died earlier this summer, and it's a little bit embarrassing. Her official title was Dr. Ann Carafa. She had a PhD. So she was my real role model of a working mom, or, my mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went to Baylor, everybody there called her Dr. Carafa, but we knew her as Aunt Sister, which sounds very...
Alabama.
Yeah.
like cousin brother.
Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, I'm about to have a cousin brother.
Nice. I was married to a lady from Kentucky for a while,
Yeah, you get it.
and they had double cousins. Brother, sister, double cousins. And not only was that strange, they only have like 4 names for like 16 of them. So it's like Katie, Mary, Katie, Katie, Mary, Katie.
Swap 'em around.
And a lovely family, by the way. I don't mean to disparage them.
It sounds like they love each other a lot.
I'm sure she did.
That's possible.
Sure she did.
Anyways,
Anyway, she was the associate dean of the School of Education. And so whenever I would do the things that, Baylor girls should not be doing, like
Dancing,
Yeah, being late to prayer,
wearing pants.
showing ankles. I get it.
right, Aunt Sister would come save the day. So I've always been really blessed. In Beaumont, I had Walter Humphrey, and in Waco, I had Aunt Sister. So I almost could not screw up. I tried real hard, but I had to.
Well, it's weird because I see you next to Kyle, and Kyle didn't have that, and so we know what you could have been.
Yes. If you can't be a good example, be a terrible warning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I do.
I like that dichotomy right there.
so you go into Judge Fisher's courtroom was like a museum. Did he bring you back like during the trial, like to come visit with him? Yeah, so you got the full treatment. I mean, have y'all been in his court? I mean, it was redone after he passed, I think, a little bit, but Judge Hartfield had it. But it is like, you'd think if a Supreme Court judge had presided over a regular trial, it would be in that courtroom.
Yes, it is so ornate. It's huge. The woodwork is beautiful. It really looks like they could film a trial movie in there. That's the setting you would want if you wanted some.
Is this in Beaumont?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Federal court. So you're and seeing your dad and helping out a very injured person, you're hooked. And so you go in, you and your sister both, and you go to Baylor.
We go to Baylor, and as you know, through the Muldrow experience, practice court is supposed to be just, the absolute worst thing that can happen in your life. And Muldrow had a methodology where every single student in the class got called on, and you would have to stand up, and you were going to be humiliated. It didn't matter what you knew, who you knew, you were going to be just humiliated in the process. He was very good at it. And for some reason, when he got my sister and I, Jill, sat next to each other. And for some reason, when he got to us, he got confused. Could be that we're identical twins.
Mm-hmm.
And she got called on first. And then she got called on second.
Yeah, nice.
And we just had this little momentary, our eyes met. And as identical twins can do, we just had this little momentary agreement that she was going to take the bullet.
Be cool, Jill.
Be cool. And I started writing notes as fast as I could. I just, was answering for her. And so I am the only person I know of that went to Baylor under Muldrow in practice court and never got called on.
I guess you're even for the handcuffs Warren thing.
Right.
Okay. On the strip search, almost.
Yeah, almost strip search.
Yeah. So it works out.
Yeah.
And so
So normally at Baylor, for the strip search, you gotta pay extra for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're on scholarship. Too soon?
Unless you play football.
All right.
True.
We're on the same page.
See how easy it is?
We're not saying anything you wouldn't say.
Yeah. You're not. Bear down.
So, what's your first job out of law school?
Oh, I'm kind of embarrassed.
Why? You've met Bill. Things
Yeah.
couldn't possibly be weirder than that.
At that time, well, there's a little bit of pre-story that has to come to that story.
Fire away.
Jill and I are walking down the hallway at the law school one day, and there's a girl from Dallas. Her dad's a lawyer. And she stops us and says, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I just heard about your dad." And Jill and I look at each other and think, okay, what happened? As far as we know, he's okay. What's going on? And she says, "Well, my dad just called and said that your dad just turned state's evidence on Walter Humphrey, and he's being put in the witness protection program, and y'all will never see him again." And we just looked at each other and we're like, well, okay, we've had some crazy shit happen, but, we better go call Dad.
Yeah.
So we go call Dad, and he says, yes, there's a big Rico investigation, which is funny because Rico is a theme that has continued to
Come back around.
Yeah, since then. So it was involving the union and the law firm, and it was a mess, and my dad and Walter had split up. So he was definitely not going to be in the witness protection program. And my dad had a real easy way about him. He never got ruffled. He never got, upset about things. He would just always kind of look for the silver lining or some way to laugh about it. And his response to us was, "Girls, I'm a big fish in a small pond, and I'd rather be a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond. And we're going to have to tighten our belts because the IRS has frozen all my accounts, but we'll get through it." And we did. And a few months later, he and Walter were partners again. At the Christmas party, they sang, they karaoke'd. Breaking up is hard to do. So anyway, Jill and I got out of law school during that time period when they were split up, and we went to work for my dad.
Okay.
But my dad never really thought we would be lawyers the whole time we were in law school. He would say things like, girls, if you never practice law a day in your lives, I won't feel like I've wasted my money. It's a good, well-rounded education. I want you both to be well-educated. And I just couldn't understand, what this issue was with him. And I'm thinking, well, I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And one day he just said, look, it's hard. And I think for a woman, it's going to be even harder. And I'm like, well, I think I can do hard, but okay. And that, bless his soul, the best warning he could come up with in his mind at that time. Now he's looking at his probably 21, 22-year-old twin daughters. And he said, being a trial lawyer, it's like having a jealous mistress. And my first thought was, well, I don't know a thing about a jealous mistress. Is that good or bad? And number two, what do you know about it?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Kind of following.
He was like, these metaphors are really starting to get me in trouble.
Yeah, they got him in trouble. They did. Anyway, so Jill and I go work for our dad for that time period. He had his own firm in Port Arthur. And then he and Walter got back together, and I walked into my job at Provost Humphrey in October of 1995, pregnant with twins.
Which is a great time to start there.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Oh, we were hazed so badly.
Did your twins become lawyers?
No, my twins are much smarter than somebody that would do this job.
Not hard to do.
Yeah.
So you're at a Provost Humphrey at the office that's right there within 200 yards of the federal courthouse with the helicopter pad on top.
Yes, sir. I was there for 22 years.
And Mr. Humphrey would fly from his property kind of north of town and helicopter back and forth.
He would.
And those were the days. You still had some, pre-tobacco, what was it, still asbestos and...
Yeah, it was a lot of asbestos, a lot of, when we got there, my sister was struggling with an autoimmune disorder. And my dad really didn't want her to have to do like what he considered the grueling trial stuff. So he cut a deal with Walter where she went into the onto the silica docket. And I went what we call downstairs with the litigators. And you asked me a question.
Oh, the kind of the big stuff. I know y'all had a bunch of single event stuff, but then the bigger.
My sister did the mass tort stuff, and I did the single event. And shortly thereafter is when all the tort reform started hitting. Walter was just brilliant in terms of always pivoting to meet what was going on, and he just knew how to make money. He could smell it. And I have a completely inappropriate story about that, but he around that time is when we started. He'd always had a relationship with the union. And I say the union, it was like the OCAW.
Yep.
And then they merged with the paper workers, and I might have it out of order, but then the steel workers came along. And my dad had a lot of paper worker contacts. And so this union was just getting bigger and bigger. And so Walter developed this program he helped the steelworker union develop this program called the Emergency Response Team. So when a union member was injured catastrophically, the union would send in a representative to sit down with the family and walk them through workers' comp, FMLA, just all the things that these families need in that moment. And then the union rep, if they thought there could be some third-party liability, would say, there's a law firm that works with us, and if you want to call them, here's their number. So I started off as a baby lawyer at my dad's firm doing a lot of industrial stuff locally. And then when I got to Provost Humphrey, it went national on the United Steelworkers. So I had a big burn case in Torrance, California. I had a death case in Duluth, Minnesota. I had stuff in Illinois and Florida, Georgia, North Carolina. I was just packing my bags and going all over the place. And, that was the brilliance of Walter Humphrey. When other firms in Texas were struggling because of all the tort reform, we were doing well, but we were working hard for it.
I got a case right now in Duluth. This is really hard to get to. It's the Ford case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. It's in Duluth. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like, we'll get into your current firm, but I feel like Chip had a bunch of products liability, like GM cases, when I was clerking for Judge Fisher.
He did. Chip, let me see how I can say this. My dad was Walter's trial lawyer when he was there. But as he got older, Chip replaced him. So when Walter had a case, like my dad had several explosion cases I remember as a child. I remember Mr. Babin down the street was part of the St. Patrick's Day explosion, and all the skin and everything on his thumb burned off. And so they opened up his stomach and inserted his thumb and we'd see him at the store, and he'd say, how's my case going, Mr. Swearingen? And my dad would talk to him. So my dad had several big industrial explosion cases, but Walter was running the firm, and when those kind of cases come up that need to be litigated, he turned to my dad, and then he turned to Chip. So Chip Ferguson, for the 22 years that I was there, he was Walter's go-to trial lawyer.
Got it. And did you work with Chip there?
I never, to this day, Chip and I have never tried a case together, and people can't believe that. We've come close, but we never have. But not really. I didn't really work directly for Chip ever, but I had a big case out of state where we started having some trouble, and I needed some help on just I needed somebody to protect me at the firm. I was getting a lot of pressure to settle the case. I was getting pressure my client to settle the case. And so it was unlike the night I called out his name in jail, Walter, come help me. I didn't want to do that at the firm. I always felt like that was probably not fair of me to play the Walter Humphrey card, because he'd known me my entire life. And so when I got into a little bit of a pickle and I needed, some support, I went to Chip. And I told you about my sister and I getting hazed a little bit when we started there. It's the absolute truth. There were some people that were not happy about my dad coming back. They thought, oh my God, he's dragging these twin daughters. This is just a bunch of dead weight here. And I had one partner there that would not speak to me for probably a good 3 years. Literally, I would say to his face in the hall in the morning, good morning. And he would just walk right past me. And so it was a tough start. But Chip was one of those that he did not do that. And when I needed him in that case where I really needed him, he stepped up and made sure that I had discretion to advise my client on what I thought he should do, and then give my client the choice. That's the way my dad raised me. We're hired to try these cases, and we're not in the arm twisting business. Our clients have been victimized. It's their choice, as long as they are adequately informed of the risk and what's on the table. Then it's our job to go try their case. And not all plaintiffs' lawyers operate that way.
Sure.
I agree.
Y'all seen them, I'm sure.
Sure.
So Provost Humphrey, 20 some odd years, and then what year was it that you joined up with the Ferguson firm where you are now?
That was in 2000, and Chip left in about August, September of 15, and I followed in 16. I really didn't want to get embroiled, I'm sure. I mean, it's a matter of public record, but there was a lot of controversy with Chip's exit and what went on. And I'd been there a long time. I had people there that I considered friends. Chip came and asked me to go with him, and I turned him down. It was a mistake that I rectified as quickly as I could. But I just really had hoped to stay out of the litigation. You know, this is what we do all day, every day, 7 days a week. I just had a great desire not to litigate in my personal life.
Sure. And currently the firm has how many lawyers?
Well, we had a new one start today, so I think we're up to 15. I'd have to count for sure, but 14, 15, we've grown very rapidly. Thanks in part, I mean, that sounds wrong because I wish TPC hadn't been greedy bastards and blown up their plant, but thanks a lot to the TPC that explosion created for us the need to staff up and hire a bunch of lawyers and help.
We talk a lot about how
Thankful. That just came out so wrong. You'll know I'm not thankful.
No, that's
They blew up, but that was
It motivated y'all to grow. And y'all needed it. So
well, the neighbors should be thankful for y'all that. And this leads into my next question. We talk about how Houston, in our view, is a very good legal town, excellent lawyers, national, tops. But really, if you look at per capita, Beaumont has some of the best lawyers, particularly back then when you had Provost Humphrey firm, Rio Morgan and Quinn firm, Weller Green. Yeah.
Have you been to our courthouse and seen the bronze, the new bronze statue they have? It's Wayne Rio, Buddy Lowe, and Walter Humphrey. It's bust, three bust. And I can't quote it exactly, but it says something like trial lawyers. Oh, dang it, I don't want to mess it up. I'm going to get it for y'all so y'all can say it, but something about reference to lawyers that are actually willing to go in and try a case, damn few. And I love that.
Yeah. Why do you think that neck of the woods has generated these hugely successful lawyers?
The industry. I think that, like I said, growing up in the 70s, they were blowing people up.
Still are.
Yeah, still are. The case that we refer to as the St. Patrick's Day explosion, it was 14 or so just men that were just literally incinerated. And, those days they didn't have all the discovery and all it came down to doing a really thorough investigation, lining up your witnesses, and you could go get the case settled. I remember that case, the big piece of evidence was an x-ray of a pipe. So I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the weld. I would like to go back and talk to some of the lawyers that worked with my dad back then because I just have these bits and pieces. There was a big case called the High Note case where there was a strike and a scab had crossed the picket line and got shot at his home, and the union got sued. Now, this story is important. It's a really important foundational story to how that law firm grew its union business the way that it did, that resulted in that emergency response team I told y'all about earlier. So Mr. High Note was in his driveway, and he got shot at, and he sued the union and said that they were retaliating against him for crossing the picket line. And the firm, my dad was their trial lawyer, represented the union, and they, I think they tried it and won, and then the judge granted a new trial and transferred venue to like Crockett, somewhere in Central Texas. During that time period, while that high note case was going on, Jill and I were out on our driveway. This probably explains some of what's wrong with us. We were just playing outside after school one day, and these two guys pulled up in a truck and pulled a gun and said, "You tell your dad if he doesn't, quit represent the union," or something to that effect, there'll be some consequences. I don't remember all the details. I just remember the truck, the gun, and my sister and I were running in the house and telling our mom, and she picks up the phone and hysterically calls our dad. So it was wild in Beaumont. It was crazy.
Jill didn't trip you on the way inside?
Not that time.
Not intentionally.
Jill is the first person that ever lied to me, though, and I can tell you that.
I feel like
very well.
Is Jill still practicing?
She's semi-retired. She only works when I make her work, and
We got to get Jill in here to defend herself.
You got to.
Jane said Jill is board certified trial lawyer.
She is. And we have more fun trying cases together. It should almost not be allowed because
You shouldn't tell them you're twins. The defense lawyers will be like, where do they get all the energy? They look so well rested.
Right. We just have a great time doing it. But she does a lot of work with our firm. She's licensed in Texas and Louisiana. So there was a time we didn't have a Louisiana lawyer. She did that for us, and she enjoys it, just maybe not as much as I do. She's really good at voir dire. I know that's not how you're supposed to say it, but she, like I said, the psychology major. And I've picked plenty of juries. She just does it better. What she says is that she can see in me, well, that terrifying thing, Bill, that jurors maybe might not open up completely. They can tell they're taking an opinion that I don't like. And so she's just really good at getting up there and not giving off any vibe about if she thinks her answer is a good one or a bad one, and then I'm the one that is the fighter, that I'm just gonna get up there, and she's had to literally drag me away from the bench before, like, okay, come on. So you need to come sit down.
Before we started, you talked a little bit about offline about some of your favorite things to do in litigation. So the question is, what is it you feel like you do best? What do you feel like you do better than anybody else that makes you such a great lawyer?
Okay, I would never say this about myself, but I have been told by a lawyer that I've worked with quite a bit that I'm a really good teacher. The way I would characterize it is that I can take a really complicated engineering concept and if the dumb blonde can understand it, I can get a jury usually to understand it. So I think that I'm good at taking complex things and making it simple, and teaching it to a jury. One time Walter signed up this case, God bless his soul too, and I just thought, what are you thinking? This is the most ridiculous thing. I don't know what I'm doing on this. Why did you do this? It was a local EPC, engineering, procurement, construction company. And they had gotten involved in a local project involving some salt dome storage systems. And the company they had gotten a contractual dispute with, they were a bunch of former Enron guys that had a business here in Houston.
You can't trust Enron.
Ever.
Trust.
Right, I know. Shocking.
Weird, huh?
They left this little tiny company in Beaumont holding about $1 million in change orders. And I tried and tried and tried. I met with my client who was an engineer, and I had a really good second chair lawyer that had the case on an hourly rate, and he had reduced his rate so much, and then he got to where he just couldn't afford it. So Walter signs them up on a contingent fee and gives it to me. And I could not understand what in the world my client was trying to explain, what he was talking about, and got into the contract, and there were a lot of API things, and I just had to become a mini engineer because we couldn't afford an expert. And I locked myself in a conference room with my client one weekend, and I just said, we're not leaving here until you can make me understand why what they did was wrong. I see in this contract you had this change order procedure. You know, they're saying you didn't follow it. They owe you $1 million. You know, what is going on here? And after about 2 days locked up in that room together, pounding on the table, I just had this light bulb moment. I'm like, oh, that's like building a home. You bid to build a spec home, and then they wanted a custom home. That's easy. Anybody can understand that. Why couldn't you? I mean, he couldn't make me understand it, but we got there. And so we go to trial, and the lawyers are from Houston. And at the end of the case, they put up a PowerPoint. It was the very first time I'd seen a defense use a PowerPoint in closing. And because I talked about the custom, you know, the spec home versus a custom home and all these extra bells and whistles. And he gets up in closing, and his first slide says, the plaintiff's case is cute and catchy. And I had about 4 women on that jury that just all looked at me, sister, don't be okay. Make these bastards pay for that. And they did. And they sent out a note during deliberations. They wanted to know where was the blank for them to fill in mental anguish. And the judge looked at me and said, you damn PI lawyer, I knew you'd come in here and mess this up.
Also, before we were taping, you discussed how much you love doing doc review. And so...
Well, that circles up with one of the things we've talked about, which was your recent verdict in New Mexico on a death case involving
Judgment.
Yeah, judgment, but verdict, judgment, settlement, et cetera. And that was a context, Kyle, not to steal your thunder, but how there were some documents that you uncovered that were pretty powerful, at least according to the reporting I've seen.
Yeah, they were. So what was interesting about that case, this is a triple fatality at a tank battery and a tank battery is not to, explain things that y'all may know already. It's just where they are extracting oil and gas out of the ground, and they have tanks where they put the product to store it until they can sell it. And then they have tanks for the production water that they've used in the fracking. And they weren't even fracking yet. This was supposed to be, and it really was. It wasn't just supposed to be. This site, the tank battery was still under construction. It had not been fully piped and sealed and plumbed up and all that. And this oil company had a spill of about 300 barrels at another site down the road. And instead of doing the right thing, and that's the thing that it blows my mind. 30 years later, I still think, why? It would have been so easy. Just do the right thing. They should have reported it to the state, and then they should have brought in a vacuum truck and properly disposed of it. Instead, they said, oh, there might be some marketable oil in all this mess. Let's sell it. But they didn't have anywhere to put it because they had overflowed all their tanks on that site. So literally in the dark of night, they hire a vacuum truck to come suck it up and take it to the tank battery that is, I said it, still under construction, and put the oil in a tank there until they could decide how to sell it or steal it or whatever they were going to do with it. Well, guess what? The tank battery that wasn't fully completed yet started leaking. And so they had a mess on their hands. So they try to clean it up as much as they can. And then that's costly, right? They're incurring a bunch of cleanup costs. Well, where are they going to bill that to? Somebody, an interest owner in one of those wells, has to pay for that. So our theory was they called the manufacturer of the tank and reported it as a warranty claim. That we had this big mess, not because of all this bad stuff we did. We had this big mess because you sold us a defective tank that had a leaky weld. And so our guys, a crew of 3, a welder who was the crew leader, who was my client, a coder painter, and a helper, went out on the Friday before Labor Day weekend to make their client happy. And they thought it was a virgin tank that had never contained product, and they were getting all their equipment out to weld, and it ignited, and they were nothing left but skeletons, the zippers off their blue jeans, and then this little round metal thing that I looked at on autopsy pictures for a while before it dawned on me it was the steel toe out of their steel toe boots. It burned them.
Jesus.
So anyway, we get into that, and
Where was this again?
this was in New Mexico.
Oh.
The explosion happened near Carlsbad, but New Mexico has a nice venue statute where wherever the personal representative resides, you can file there. So Las Vegas, which is San Miguel County, has some really good, experienced personal representatives. So you hire one of them, and then
But the actual explosion, was that in New Mexico?
it was near Carlsbad. So we get into it, and I mean, it was a fight. We alleged some Rico because of the failure to report to the state the spill that they should have reported. We sued the oil company. We sued the oil field services company. We sued the pumper that participated in the transfer to an unfinished tank battery. And I'm just looking through these documents one day because we're about to depose these 2 brothers that were over the site. And they're Spanish speakers, but I think they speak some English too. And I noticed that they're taking tests in both. Some tests they take in Spanish, some they take in English. And I go, well, that's nice. I bet they're bilingual. Nothing fishy there. And then I get to the true false, and I guess it's that teacher thing. I'm like, oh, I wonder what you ask on a safety test. And I see this big.
Are these like employee qualification tests?
Can I borrow your picture
Absolutely.
real quick? There's this big at the top, 100. Wow, that's the kind of paper I used to get excited about when one of my kids brought that home from school.
Kyle, that's the first time you've seen that.
Yeah.
I've lived right there in the meaty part of the curve behind a C++.
Kyle didn't know it went that high.
That's your first.
It's my first.
That's their first 100. I'm honored, by the way. So I'm just looking, and there's true, false, and there's just all of them. And I go, well, wait a minute. I am blonde. At least I pay to be.
You left-handed?
And left-handed. Mm-hmm. And I know that on a true-false test, the correct answer is not both true and false. What's going on here? So we started looking at the lady. It was a female-owned company that provided the safety training. And there were some other plaintiffs' firms involved. And I said, hey, guys, we know there was a huge safety failure on that job site. These guys should have never had their truck that close to the tank battery. They should have never been unloading equipment. They should have never been staging welding equipment. Somebody there messed up, and I think it's because they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, maybe they just messed up because they didn't care, but maybe they weren't properly trained. And we went down that avenue with the safety company. But here's where it gets, I think, interesting. We sent a demand. We think you've done some improper training. we're going to let you out for your policy limits. Give us your policy limits. No. So we file suit, we do some discovery, and we learn that not only are they just not doing a good safety job in terms of the actual training, but if you need an H2S card, you can go in and take the 8-hour class and get your card and pay $200 to get that. But if you really need it that day, you can go in and pay $400 and not take the class.
No, it's like an inspection sticker for a vehicle with no mufflers.
And Jane,
Yeah.
for the layperson or someone who's doesn't do the workplace injury stuff, but is it H2S card? Is that just some kind of insignificant thing that like maybe that's okay to just check the box, or is that maybe kind of important?
Well, H2S is deadly.
Depends on what it smells like. If it's skunky, you're okay. But if it's sweet, you need to run.
You need to run.
I grew up in Deer Park.
Or if you don't smell it at all, which I think happens sometimes with vapors.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be dealing with tanks that have contained or may contain H2S, you have to know what you're doing. The failure in our case was not necessarily H2S. It was confined space entry. And, basically it was a hard case because the only people that could tell our side of the story were
Gone.
all dead. And a lot of lawyers, it was referred to me, a lot of lawyers just didn't think the case could be made because how insanely stupid for these welders to go and try to weld at a tank battery that contained flammable product. And the sheriff's office had been there. We had a lot of law enforcement investigation stuff that we could kind of use as a springboard. But I was reading the statements to the initial responding sheriff's deputies and then also to OSHA, and it just wasn't making sense to me. It was not making sense. I was told that my client was very meticulous, very careful. He wouldn't do anything reckless. His family had just taken a whitewater rafting trip that summer, and he would not go on the whitewater rafting trip because he said, I provide for this family. I can't take that kind of risk. So we just knew something was there. So we start, looking, and, I heard that your guest in here before me talk about Snapchat. So a Snapchat video is kind of what turned this case. The oil company took the position that when our crew got there, they were told, there's been oil in that tank. It's not been cleaned. It hasn't been steamed. It's not ready. It's dangerous. Do not do any work. Well, okay. We did have our crew supervisor who got a phone call from my client from the scene. And he said, there's nobody here. We don't really know what we're supposed to be doing. And shortly thereafter is when the explosion happened. So we knew something happened in between. And the oil company wanted to make it out that these guys were Friday before a holiday weekend. They're just these Wild West cowboys ready to get the hell out of there and, go have a nice long weekend. And we felt like they had been given bad information. So we get this Snapchat video from one of the families. And it is of my client. It's taken by one of his crew members. And he's just sitting there in his truck. He just looks like Cool Hand Luke. So calm, not ruffled, not in a hurry, not aggravated. And this gives me chills, but, I don't know. The guy taking the video is one of them that burned up. He says, do we get to go home now? And my client says, maybe not. And, that sad answer was no, they didn't. And I know that their supervisor, who they made the phone call to, told them, stay put in the truck and await instructions from the company man. And I know, of course, he lied about it, but that the company man came in and said, okay, y'all go ahead. And it was not safe.
And the jury, well, no, you settled with the company.
We settled with everybody. Now this is going to wade us into the murky waters of bad faith, but the safety company's insurance company first told us they weren't going to pay because how could they be blamed? They weren't even there. They had nothing to do with it. And then we started finding out some of this stuff we did in discovery. And then they said, well, we have an eroding policy. So for your viewers that may not know, if you purchase what you think is $1 million in insurance and it's eroding, your insurance company is going to go hire some defense lawyers who get paid by the hour. And the only way they can make money is to work a whole bunch of hours. And when it's an eroding policy, their bills get subtracted from that policy limit. So they finally came to a point where they said, okay, we give, these lawyers have been paid about $400,000. There's about $600 left. You can have it. And we said no.
And does New Mexico have an equivalent of Stowers doctrine?
They do. They do. So the case is not over, even though the judge entered the judgment for damages. The insurance company has filed a declaratory judgment action in federal court. And guess what? They attached to their complaint a certified copy of the insurance policy. New Mexico has a very specific statutory requirement. If you're an insurance company and you're going to sell somebody one of these eroding, basically bullshit, let's make some defense lawyers rich policy, there's certain statutory language that they have to put in it. Not there. Not in this policy.
It's a good fact.
Yeah, it's a very good fact. So when we started approaching trial, it was supposed to be a full-blown jury trial. This lady went and hired her own attorney, and he reached out to us and he said she will admit liability. She will accept whatever percentage of fault you think is hers, and she will assign you her cause of action against her insurance company for bad faith. And so she admitted liability and accepted a 75% fault allocation.
And what was the judgment?
A little bit north of 53 for the three families combined.
$53 million?
$53 million.
Did y'all represent all three families that were left? Ish.
So
What were the other, any other plaintiffs firms y'all were working with that we would know?
some amazing lawyers. And I was going to bring their newspaper article. Sam Fadul, it's his firm, Fadul, Hardy, Clough. You may know Josh Conway. He's one of the ownership partners there. Just did a remarkable job. Rick Barrera, who's originally from the Midland area. He has an office here in Houston. I'm not good with names. Buckingham Barrera, he had part of the case, but we decided early on, and isn't it funny how all things loop back to Baylor?
Oh, God.
We made a policy limits demand on the oil company, and they were represented by a lawyer who went to get whoever gets it right wins. Baylor.
Chris Martin.
Already. But he only went to undergrad. That's why.
I was guessing Chris because they're the insurance law firm in town.
I know
He
him.
might not have had to pay when he paid it.
Met Chris once.
We made a policy limits demand, and the insurance company, I can't say he did it. The insurance company responded with individual offers to each family, and guess who was the low woman on the totem pole? You're looking at her. But it's because my client was the supervisor, the foreman of his crew, and they truly thought they were going to put a huge allocation of fault on him. Well, the families came together, the lawyers came together, and, had an agreement from pretty much that day forward. We're in this together. Everybody here has suffered an immeasurable loss. There will never, ever be enough money to compensate for what happened here, and we're going to agree that whatever comes of this whole tragedy, financial-wise, will be split a third.
Really?
Really.
That's awesome.
That gives me chills, too, because it shows you that not all people are greedy and not all lawyers are greedy, and that there are still people out there. And I think everybody in our business, their heart is in the right place for the most part, but there are still people out there willing to do the right thing.
The woman who basically made an offer of judgment and said, we screwed this up, it's our fault, after fighting it, do you think she was just getting bad advice from her lawyers and that's what made her change her mind? What, any idea what precipitated that change of heart?
We don't know, but the timing of it all was very odd. All the plaintiffs' attorneys, we were here in Houston, huddled up in a conference room at a hotel, prepping our expert. And we all get this email from our staff that says, hey, this guy named Mr. Such and Such has called and he's personal counsel for her. And we're all looking at each other. Hey, did you just get that call? Did you get that call? And we told our expert we needed to excuse him and let him take a little break while we got on the phone. So we just got the guy on the speakerphone and he said, my client will sign whatever you want to sign. Whatever, just she doesn't want to go to trial. Just make a proposal. Now that's part of.
And were these her employees?
These were her employees who were all female.
You're talking about the training company. Yeah, not the 3 guys that died.
Not the 3 guys that died. They worked for the tank fabrication company, who they were making what we felt like was a fraudulent warranty claim to try to sweep all this cost of their big mess under the rug. Not sweep it under the rug. They were trying to put it on our people, the tank company. But the safety company, they were all female employees who said they had no training at all on how to provide safety training. And they were just told to show lots of cleavage, wear tight jeans, high heels, sit on a lap or two if they needed to. And one of them even had a picture of the 2 brothers that we say made the bad decisions that day. And they're like slumped over, eyes closed, dozing off in class. And she captioned it, "This is social media. You got to love it. Paying real close attention per the usual."
And so, Jane, the whole reason why they have this training is because the oil companies will require their contractors, hey, you have to go get this certification or that certification. Is that why it's even done in the first place?
It is, because it is recognized in the industry that that type of work is inherently dangerous. You are dealing with flammable, highly flammable material, and it's really tough to control ignition sources. So this is one of those big words I don't like to use, but when you read about, all things that can go wrong in the oil patch, they call it, ignition sources, a spark. They're, somebody make sure I say this correctly, ubiquitous. They're everywhere. You can't control them. Static electricity.
Yeah, you don't even need a spark. Sometimes it's just heat.
Somebody will have a wrench and walk by a truck and accidentally strike their wrench against the truck. You have a spark. You cannot control the ignition sources just by the nature of the beast. So what you have to do is isolate the oil and gas. You have got to separate it to where there is no chance or very little chance it can come in contact with an ignition source. Because once you've got, it's a fire triangle, you've got fuel, you've got air, and you've got ignition, you're going to have a fire. And these guys did hear, there were some bystanders on the site. We talked about that at trial. We had an amazing expert from here in Houston, Dr. John Vincent, come in as a grief specialist, which I think we all need to look at after our recent Supreme Court decision.
I agree.
And one of the things we had struggled with as the plaintiff's trial team was, how do we put a monetary figure on whatever our 3 decedents experienced in those moments pre-death? We did have one eyewitness that saw a couple of them running around in a fireball, like trying to escape. We did have one of the guys had tried to duck under their truck. He had an arm and a leg under the truck, but he clearly didn't make it. But we're trying to, how do you put a dollar figure on that isn't offensive to the court or your family? You're walking a real tightrope there. And Dr. Benson had evaluated all of the survivors for basically their grief response. How were they coping? How were they dealing with the loss? But right before we put him on, I said, Dr. Vincent, we're struggling with this, and you do a lot of trauma counseling. Have you ever counseled anybody who's had a near-death experience? Can you tell me what happens to the human mind in those seconds? And he goes, absolutely. I've studied it. I've counseled people. And he had testified, or I don't know if he testified or if he just worked as an expert. Y'all know the case, unless you're so young, and then I'm going to have to slap all of y'all.
I had just turned 36, to be fair.
Well, a long time ago, probably when Bill was still in diapers, there was a case here where the firefighters got trapped in a hotel fire or a structure fire. I think it was a hotel. And their comm devices were Motorola devices, and they didn't work. So when they were trapped and about to burn up, they couldn't call their, fellow firefighters and say, hey, we're in, room 202 or whatever, come help us. And in that work, Dr. Vincent, along with a lot of his counseling, had talked to people who had been in near-death experiences. And so he got up and explained to the court how, even though from I'm going to say purely scientific standpoint, what they endured was probably seconds, to them, their minds would have just slowed down. So you hear about the time warp when somebody's experiencing panic or near death, that to them, everything slowed down. So whatever time period it was, it felt like a lot longer. And that, the jolt of adrenaline, what it does to your body, he described all of that. And then the last thing, he talked about how truly your life does flash before your eyes. So we told this court, that these families that were up there just grieving this horrible tragedy, that, their loved one in those moments was thinking of them. And that's one thing that my client in particular had really, really struggled with, because she had sent a text. And, when you go through grief like that, there are certain things you fixate on, just to the point of obsession where it will drive you mad if you don't deal with it or get some help. And in this text message, she had told her husband how much she loved him and how excited she was to spend the long holiday weekend with him and the kids, and looking forward to all the things they were going to do together as a family. And she could not figure out if he had read that before he left this earth or not. And so I think her hearing Dr. Vincent say, it didn't matter if he did or didn't. If you were on his mind, you were in his conscious thoughts in those last moments, I think helped her.
He testified in court.
He did. And the judge was crying. Everybody was crying. I've done this job for 30 years. I have never stood up at a podium in court and cried. And I had a hard time holding my shit together.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like,
What is it? Dr. Benson? You said Vincent?
Vincent.
Where's he out of? Or she?
He is here in Houston.
Just like an independent consultant? Or
Yes, he's got some partners. I just can't remember their names. He worked with a colleague who did some of the testing. But, one of the things, if you have not read it and you are going to try, or not even try, if you are going to handle a wrongful death case and you have not read the book called Grief and Loss, written by a trial lawyer, that's what I should have brought with me today. I started reading it in preparation for this trial because, really the old school thought is that, grief has these stages, and they're just really nice and neat and clean. Stage 1, denial. You just don't believe it happened. And then stage 2,
Guilt.
anger. Then, and it's just, that's not how people grieve. And we knew that was a big component. We had really diverse families with all different stories. One of the decedents had been in prison and had missed his daughters, basically their childhood. And they're grown in their early 20s when he gets out. And he was so committed to making up for that he drove 6 hours one way. So he drove 12 hours every weekend to go spend time with them, get to know them, take them, out to eat, shopping, play games. He was really, he had a second chance to make it right for these daughters of his. And he was, they were all robbed of that. My family, they had been high school sweethearts, had 2 kids. The dad was a big baseball player, but and pretty good at it. And his son wanted to play soccer. He never played soccer, but he, dove in. He learned everything he could about soccer. He was the coach of his soccer team. And his son was 13 when his dad was killed. And he just dropped out of life. He quit playing soccer. He quit going to school. He started making bad decisions. And Dr. Vincent did a really amazing job talking about what that does. But let me loop back to the book, because the book was written by a trial lawyer and a grief counselor. And from what I could tell by my Google sleuthing, she's now deceased. They give you checklist of things to think about when you talk to a daughter who's lost a mom versus a daughter who's lost a dad, a husband that's lost a wife versus a wife who's lost a husband, a sibling, all those things, just how to put it in perspective. And it was a really good book, but it was heavy. It was dark.
Yeah, not just for lawyers, but for anyone who's got a loved one who's had a loss of a father, a mother, or child, or...
Yeah. I read it on an airplane. We were going earlier this summer on we went to Peru with some friends to hike a portion of the Inca Trail in Machu Picchu, and everybody's on the plane, partying. And
you're crying.
What are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm reading this book about, oh my God, what is wrong with you, And I think about this a lot because I'm old, Bill. I've done it for 30 years.
I don't believe you.
I have good genes. Thank you, Mom. On my darkest day, because this stuff can weigh on you. It can depress you. You just think these poor families. And I get right in there with my clients. I mean, I'm not ever going to have, my paralegals do a shit ton of work, but I go to their home, I get to know them, I try to become as much a part of their family as they will allow me, because I think it helps me do my job better when I know the things that matter to them and the things they spent their time on. So on my really worst days, I think, I broker misery, and that's hard. But on my best days, I think I hold those fucking bastards accountable. And maybe the next time that dumb, you can just fill in the blanks,
Right.
Whatever you want, is asked, is it okay for us to start our work? He'll think about it. Or the next time that lady has workers come in to take the fucking safety training so they don't blow people up and render them skeletons, maybe they'll actually pay attention and learn and do it right. So it angers me because the harm they do is so first of all, it's life ending.
And they know better.
And they know better. And then it just leaves these families so devastated. My clients, the widow, her pain, and this happened in 2017. Okay, so we fought this case. Yeah,
6.
And still fighting it.
her when she got on the stand and still fighting it. It's not over. Her grief was so palpable. It felt like it sucked the oxygen out of the room. Like people were not breathing, just listening to her. And when you see a judge, when you see plaintiffs' lawyers that have done it, like me, I know people think I'm heartless at times. The Ice Queen, I've been called.
No one thinks that except for Bill.
Yeah, I call you. I started that name call, the Ice Queen.
Ice Queen.
No, it's funny that you talk about that because growing up in Deer Park when I did, so two of my super close, there was one set of twins and then one brother and my buddy and his brother, and they both lost their dads at Phillips in '88. And so everyone knew because it was like, I think 23 died in that explosion. But their moms, like, as you were talking about it, I was thinking about them and like, they're the same way. Like, I don't think you ever get over it. But yeah, I don't think a lot of people even figure out a way to deal with it.
Yeah, you really don't. And that's another thing that Dr. Vincent did for us because the son, he's older than 19 now. He's early 20s, actually has a child of his own. He just would shut down. His coping was to not cope. And according to Dr. Vincent, that's the most dangerous approach to grief.
Yep.
And even like I went in their hotel room over the weekend to talk about we weren't even talking about the hard stuff. We're just talking about logistics, what to wear, where to be, what we were going to do over the weekend. And he was sitting in a chair and there were two beds and his mom's on one bed, his grandma and sister on the other bed. I'm sitting on the foot of the bed and he's just sitting in the chair listening, but not participating in the conversation at all. And then when I started talking about that we were going to have to talk about the hard stuff, I noticed that he moved from the chair and he just went face down on the bed by his mom with his face in the pillow. And I just knew this guy is so hurt and this is going to be so hard. And I brought one of our young associates and who was a baseball player. And I thought, if anybody can relate to this kid, and he's not a kid, he's a
Young man.
If anybody can relate to this young man, it's going to be Cullen. And Cullen did a really good job trying to pull out of him some of the hurt. He said some things when he and Cullen met that he would not say on the stand because he didn't want to hurt his mom anymore.
Sure.
And Dr. Vincent did a real good job explaining how grief problems manifest themselves and how you can look at somebody and think, well, what's wrong with him? He's not even shedding a tear. He's just sitting there like a, stone. It's because if he tries to, he's buried it so deep for so long. If he would try to talk about it, he would have, I learned a new term, what Dr. Vincent calls an emotional aneurysm, where it's like
It's an eruption of everything at once. Yeah.
Yeah, just a complete meltdown. Anyway, I hope that case ends soon because I know from representing these families, as y'all know, that although the hard part is over, they will never again have to sit in a courtroom where the pictures are shown or where where it's talked about. They'll never have to publicly talk about it. Every time I call them to talk about the case, it's just like ripping a scab. They make progress, some.
Yeah.
They heal, and then here comes Jane to talk about the worst day of our life all over again. And then I've had other clients. I had a triple fatality in Georgia years ago when I was I'd say just kind of, it was my first really big case. And I represented 2 widows, and one of the decedents had 5 kids by 3 different ladies. Baby 1, mama 1, baby 2, mama 2, baby 3, mama 1, baby 4,
Mama too. Oh,
You had a family lawyer in here earlier who could have
Yeah, people can
diagrammed that out for us.
people reconcile all the time.
Start DNA testing at client meetings
don't-
just to be sure, like, okay, are
You
you
know,
really related to this?
People say in this world, love's dead,
Yeah.
but
So there.
sounds like it's thriving.
So you still have a relationship with those former clients?
I do, some more than others, but the day that we settled that case, and it was, my last visit to Georgia to go over all the funding, one of my widows just broke down crying, and I was so taken aback. I didn't know what to do about it. I said, this means this is good. It's over, and you and your child are going to be financially okay forever. You don't have to worry about, are you going to have a roof over your head, food on the table? I couldn't comprehend it. And she said, Jane, now I have to lose you. It's just another loss. So I do stay in contact with those that want me to, or that it's helpful in some way. I got a call the other day from a client I represented probably 25 years ago, and he still gets a structured settlement check, $5,000, tax-free dollars, shows up in his mailbox every month. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
Well, the trial we're going to ask about, I thought was going to be more about the liability side, which it was, but it was definitely much more about
It's
the
way better. Yeah.
damages side.
Questions.
I-
Can I talk about Rico just very
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. How did it fan out?
Well, everything ended up settling, but the very first time I ever was involved in a case where we brought Rico allegations against a corporate defendant was in Georgia, and it was a single event injury, and it was just the nicest South Georgia paper mill worker walking by a boiler that had been shut down for maintenance, had been certified, reports filed with the state, safe to operate. It's been through this, big inspection. And he's literally just walking past it, had nothing to do with it at all. And a flame came out of a inspection access port that was about 4 by 6 inches. And just like a flamethrower, pinned him up against a wall, burned him just severely. 70% of his body, all 10 fingers gone, face severely deformed. His ears fell off due to the vibration of the life flight helicopter because they were just barely hanging on. And I thought, oh my gosh, this company told the state it was safe to operate. And I had another boiler inspection case in Georgia a few years earlier where I kind of started to smell a rat, but I really didn't understand what was going on. So here's the scheme. To conduct a boiler inspection that the state will rely on to issue an operating certificate to the paper mill or whoever's operating the boiler, it's got to be just like you take your vehicle. You said that earlier. Just like you have to take your automobile to be inspected, these boilers have to be
For one more year.
inspected and certified as safe to operate. Well, in Georgia, like most states, the company that does that inspection is usually an insurance company, but they can only do it if they insure the boiler, because the logic behind that statutory requirement is that if the insurance company has skin in the game, if they're going to have to pay a loss if something blows up, well, we know insurance companies love money. Like Chip says, I've never met a company that doesn't bleed the same color. It's all green. So the thought is to protect their own financial interests, they'll do a good inspection. Well, these insurance companies have invented this special insurance policy. It's called an enabling policy. Like you enable an alcoholic. And so
She looked at you, Pete.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't know who needed that to hear that comment.
All three of us are in rehab.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We're having a different kind of meeting after you leave.
I know I saw y'all drinking on some of y'all's, and I'm like, I'm here with the water. You know.
I put it in coffee.
Yeah, Topo Chico for me. I don't know what these.
And I put my coffee in my coffee cup.
So, what is enabling policy is?
I'm looking at the one in this case, and for a premium of $862,000. That's the premium to the insurance company. The paper mill gets a whopping $100,000 in insurance coverage. And I go,
Just allow them to turn the machines on.
That doesn't make
makes
sense.
sense to me. Nobody would ever pay that for insurance. Well, Jane, you're just so stupid. You go
I need a stamp.
go back to Texas because we own boilers all over the globe, and they could all blow up in the same year, and then they would have to pay $100,000 per. And I'm like, okay, has it ever happened? Let me see your underwriting file. Let me see. And I just started digging, and that was, we made Rico allegations, and one day, I'll never forget it. I am sitting at the dance studio waiting to pick up my daughter, and I've got my box of goodies, and I'm just reading. And there's a letter to the paper mill from an insurance broker, the largest insurance broker in the world. And they say, "Dear paper mill, please find enclosed your invoice for this policy. Because this inspection company does not participate in your insurance tower, they have issued a shell policy so that they can conduct the state-required safety inspections." Shell policy. They use that term twice in the letter. Twice.
Well, yeah, because other than, a selected few nerds, no one's ever reading that policy.
No, it's fake insurance.
Yeah.
They come to trial.
What's theft? They're taking premiums.
Yeah, and fraud on the state.
Yeah.
So they come to trial, and they're going to try this case, and they are legitimately going to explain to the jury why that is A-OK. And they trifurcated the case because they didn't want us to talk about damages in the liability section, but come on. The guy's burned 70% of his body. He's disfigured.
He's sitting there.
Yeah.
And actually,
It's kind of implied your damage is there. It's just
The whole trial, because he's so injured he couldn't attend, but his sister, who is his legal guardian, and a nurse, a badass nurse, attended. And I've got to call her about this podcast because she would just poke me several times during this trial and say, "Where's the media? Why? I can't believe this. This is so wrong. This is a fraud. How is this not illegal? How are people not in jail?" Well, this company decides they're going to put up an in-house lawyer to explain to the jury why this is not insurance fraud.
to the stand.
On the witness stand.
Mm.
And he is licensed in not one, not two, but 3 states. And he is not going to answer a question straight up to save his life. So the judge says, "Jury, you need to be excused." The first day the guy was on the stand, the judge excused the jury about 2 or 3 times and would say, "Mr. So-and-so, I know you're a smart man. You're licensed to practice law in 3 states. If that question can be answered with a yes or no, you need to do it. If you need to explain, feel free. But let me just caution you, the more explaining you do, the worse this is going to be for you." And the guy just couldn't get it. So that night when the judge dismissed us, he said, "I want y'all to go home and study up on my powers of contempt because I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to put up with the same conduct tomorrow." So we go back to our, war room, and I say, "Okay, everybody, let's get ready to pivot here because we're going to see a completely different guy. This witness is not even going to look like the same person tomorrow, and we got to be ready for it." Well, I will be damned if that.
Yeah.
How did you know that, Bill?
Because
was he held in contempt?
He was held in contempt. The judge, again, he was very cautious how he did it, sent the jury out and said, I am sentencing you to 3 days in county jail.
Oh, no.
And I'm going to tell you what, it took every fiber of my being not to just rejoice in that moment, because I had fought this case went on for 8 years. I wanted to just jump up and have the biggest party, and I just had to sit there with my composure. But I did get to the courthouse real early the next morning, and I pulled the bailiff aside, and I'm like, okay, I swear to God, I will never repeat a word of this. And here I go. Please tell me, did he have to remember all those things?
No, fingerprints, mugshot. Yeah.
Was there? He didn't have a Walter Humphrey in that of that county.
He did not.
Let's leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that. And I got some personal, just immense satisfaction out of knowing that.
Nice.
Well, it's an
Sick. You know,
Oh, I know.
it's an interesting life.
you're not normal. It is. It's a wonderful life.
Yeah. Well, you guys are to find you, Jane. Is it FergusonFirm.com?
It is. I think Ferguson Law Firm.
And y'all are just once you come from Houston going into Beaumont, you go. Is it 96? You go south on.
You stay on I-10 and you take the Washington Boulevard exit.
Got it.
You cannot miss the Elegante Hotel, and we're right behind it. So
Beautiful place.
it's a beautiful, beautiful place.
You know the story about the guy that got shot
Yeah.
there and died?
The bullet went through the wall or something. I mean, it's a horrible place anyway.
I mean, not the only time that's happened.
No.
It's a
But
great story.
it did serve me well in the salt dome storage case, because the Houston lawyers stayed there. And one morning they came to court just looking like hell. And they said that they weren't able to shower that morning because the water had been cut off at the Elegante.
I've taken about 2,500 depositions. The one in Midland and then the one in Beaumont.
With the Ten Commandments in front.
The 10 Commandments and the giant weird metal statues. And I spent
Denver Airport.
I spent an entire summer depositions in Big Spring. And I had to stay at the
Big Spring. Oh, a good friend of mine's from Big Spring.
There's a women's prison there. You probably
No. Okay.
Right.
That's true. There has not been a major new hotel in Beaumont
not in a while.
that I can think of.
I talked too much, y'all. I burned up too much of y'all's time.
This is what we do.
We could not have been better. Thank you so much
Thanks
for
for
making
joining
time.
us this
Yeah.
week. Don't forget to
All right.
subscribe
With
to the
that,
show
we
on
will
iTunes,
end
Spotify,
this
or
edition of the
wherever
Dirty
you get
Verdict.
your
Thanks for joining. We'll see you
podcasts.
next week.
You can also visit our website at www.dirtyverdict.com. If you are interested in coming on as a guest or have a story idea, please email us at story@dirtyverdict.com.